Major support for Oregon Field Guide is provided by the Sailing Foundation.
On rappel. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Good morning, everybody.
Let's do it again.
Nicely done.
Oh, yeah.
14 and a half. Yes! That was awesome.
There you go. Up, up.
Tonight on Oregon Field Guide.
I was wondering, what are we getting ourselves into here? This is just sounding too crazy to pull off.
We take you behind the scenes of one of our biggest and most dangerous adventures ever. The journey into Valhalla, an uncharted geologic wonder, a gorge featuring a chain of waterfalls. Then we're off on a visual tour of the forest and waterfalls of the North Fork Lewis River. But first,
a lot of people feel themselves most alive in a place like this.
Ed Yon joins adventurous stand-up paddleboarders as they embark on a wild ride down the John Day River, one of our more spectacular river canyons.
The John Day River is the longest undammed river in Oregon, and it makes for a great multi-day paddle. Now, most people who do it are going to do it in something like this, big raft loaded to the hilt with all your gear. But there is another way. The first time I saw a paddleboard, it was paddle surfers, and surfing isn't my background. You know, my background is long-distance sea kayak guiding. When I saw my first touring paddleboard, a long board with gear tie-downs, I thought, that's paddleboarding. That's what I want to try.
Paul Clark said it was the John Day River that hooked him on paddleboarding. Oregon's fifth longest river runs free for 284 miles without a dam in sight. One 70-mile stretch, known as the Clarno to Cottonwood section, takes days to paddle through. Which is why Paul suggested that if we wanted to see the future of stand-up paddleboarding, or SUP, we should follow him here.
I call it adventure SUP, adventure paddleboarding. Anything that requires a little bit more than fair weather and flat water.
Paul likens adventure paddleboarding to backpacking on a river.
We're doing a 4-night paddleboard trip, basically 5 days, 4 nights, and covering 70 miles, and that really makes for a pretty casual pace.
The first few miles of the John Day meander through pretty unremarkable ranch country.
That's a fine-looking heifer.
I'm gonna push him from the right, you push him from the left.
This is Meredith Austin and Angelique Valdez's first long-distance paddleboarding trip. Fortunately, the John Day starts out fairly mellow.
When I first got on a paddleboard, I just hopped right on it and fell right off. But once you get on, you know, you kind of like wiggle around. I mean, you know, I can jump, you know, if I move around. I mean, it's pretty stable.
But just 5 miles into the trip, the river changes.
Oh, there she was.
Up ahead is Clarno Rapid, the biggest rapid on this section. Clarno is little more than a speed bump if you're sitting in a raft, but running it while standing up is a whole different game.
Yahoo! It's big today. Look at that thing curling back. Yeah, right down that green tongue between the two holes and making it through that big riser behind it and then eddying out. And that's a big ride on a paddleboard for sure.
So yeah, it's definitely, the river definitely humbles you.
The challenge is to have all your angles and to make it through standing up, but in reality, I'll likely, you know, eat it in there somewhere.
Meredith decides to play photographer for this one. Wayne goes for it and washes up. Mark hits it too. And then it's Paul's turn. Temporarily defeated, the crew decides to make camp just below the rapid. But by morning, it's Paul who rises first. He starts trekking upriver for what he calls a session.
What a session actually is repeating the same rapid over and over again. Think about going to a ski area. You ride the chairlift, you're sessioning the mountain. We're doing the exact same thing with our paddleboards.
It goes without saying that staying on your feet through this is no easy thing. It takes Paul a few tries, but with one spectacular back brace, he finally nails it. Once again in slow-mo, because this is how you do it.
Nice. Well, have any luck? Get started.
As we continue downriver, we pass 3 fishermen, the only other people we'll see for the rest of this trip.
So now that we're out of agricultural land and into the canyon, I don't think there's anything to compare it to as far as other sections on the John Day.
We wind our way north as the river cuts a ragged gash into gnarled layers of old lava that once oozed across 1,000 square miles of what's now Oregon. These are the Columbia River basalts laid down between 12 and 15 million years ago.
The columnar basalt is so awesome. I mean, it just kind of draws your attention, and this canyon kind of narrows out for long stretches, and it's just great to be able to feel like you're kind of in a cathedral and you're just sort of quietly floating along.
This is a landscape formed by dozens of volcanic eruptions and left intact ever since. 148 miles of this river are designated wild and scenic, which means no development in the river corridor. Just uninterrupted geology and solitude for hours on end.
So we're gonna go river left here. We have an option of going fully river right, but I like left because it's a little faster. It's a little bit more exciting. You ready for this? Thread the needle! Woo!
Oh yeah, the two-step.
John Day is running fast today, about 4,000 CFS. That equates to a speed of about 5 miles an hour. That's enough to keep everyone on their toes.
You get to feel every movement the river has. But the nice thing is the learning curve's pretty quick on it.
Yeah, keep it going. You're good.
I think I finally figured out how to fall.
Nice. Get your blade in the water. Some of the rolly class 2 long rapids where you get into this motion and you're just sort of floating along, and it's just like, yeah. Doesn't seem like it can get a whole lot better at that moment, and you're like, this is where I'm supposed to be right now.
Now, it may be hard to imagine 4 days on a river standing up with everything you need at your feet. But Paul even had room for this.
I am a photographer by trade.
Paul often packs a drone when rules allow.
I go on river trips because of the remoteness, and I photograph river trips because it's just such a wonderful celebration of the place that we live in. What I've been doing with the aerial photography on this trip, with the drone, I've been enjoying the reveal so that we're close, we have that human presence, and then doing a pull-up to reveal the entire landscape. And what you do with that is have an element of intimacy, and it gives that broader landscape when you're now 300 feet above the water. It's the bird's eye perspective. We always hear about that, but a bird sees a lot.
A few minutes later, and the drone is back in hand.
I love my job.
Drone aside, paddleboarding requires an ultralight mentality.
The Oregon Field Guide raft is filled with hundreds of pounds of personal and TV gear. But the paddleboarders are on their own. They carry everything they need on their own SUP. No small feat for a trip that will go on for several days.
I think for those of us who have had backpacking experience where you know how to travel light, your little compact sleep pads and your down sleeping bags, things that really can become small, you realize that you don't really need more than that. If you don't need much, you don't have to bring much.
Nice.
What I find works for me on these trips for breakfast is quick oats and coffee. During the day, it's a variety of gorp-style stacks, summer sausage, trail mix. For the evening, ramen and tuna. It's pretty simple food, but it works for me.
We wake to another gorgeous sky. To be honest, weather on the John Day during the peak April to May season is usually more feisty.
Off you guys go.
It took a few days, but by now, Angelique, who has never been on a long-distance paddle trip, is finding her groove.
I still get butterflies. I probably always will too. I see it, I'm kind of, ooh, I don't know how this will go, but so far I haven't had any bad experiences. I try to think low center of gravity, bend your knees, and as it starts getting a little more rocky and I start moving a little more, I try to just move the hips like a hula girl. And as soon as I feel the board rocking more and more side to side and I think I'm going to slide off, I'm just like, go down, drop to your knees.
Nicely done.
I'm totally fine with being a newbie and being a beginner. That's totally fine with me.
Days into our trip, everyday concerns drift away. Paddlers call this river time.
When it really gets to its best is when you aren't thinking at all. I think it's a tool towards that absence of thought, that meditative space. You know, I'm not really concentrating on the individual paddle stroke. You know, my mind is almost without thought. I'm letting it come in. I'm smelling the smells. I'm hearing the sounds. I'm taking it all in and really being in the present. A lot of people feel themselves most alive in a place like this. The logistics are challenging. The sensations are immediate. The fear is real. The cold is real. All of it is very close.
So we're passing one of the most distinct landmarks on the John Day, Hoot Owl Rock, a basalt sculpture carved by nature that looks like an owl.
And so we call tonight's camp Hoot Owl Camp. Not too many years ago, paddleboarding down a river was unheard of. The gear wasn't quite there, and then there was the perception problem.
For people who are unfamiliar with this type of activity, standing on rivers seems silly. Paddleboarding was seen as kind of a kook sport by people, like, oh, that's just so lazy people could get out on the water. Well, it's not that lazy people could get on the water, it's that everybody could get on the water.
And the John Day River is the kind of place that seems tailor-made for the future of paddleboarding.
I think that when you finally get on the water and you're going downstream, there's this, you just kind of can let everything go and literally go with the flow and think about nothing and just try to reset. When I'm in the outdoors, I definitely get that feeling of this is where I'm supposed to be right now. And once the trip's over, you can get back to the rat race and back to the mess at home, but it's super valuable to be able to shut off your cell phone, block everything out, and just see what the river gives you, see what's around the next bend.
Earlier this year, we ran a half-hour special, Discovering Valhalla, Oregon's Hidden Gorge. Not only was it the biggest and most dangerous expedition in our 28-year history, it is also the most talked about. A number of folks have asked us just how we pulled it off. So we thought we would share this behind-the-scenes look at everything that went into the production.
Being in Valhalla, it feels like you've gone into the throat of something through the stomach and you're in it.
I don't think I'd ever encountered a project that had this number of logistical and technical challenges.
We're already one camera down.
This is a dangerous place. You can die in here very fast.
I was wondering, what are we getting ourselves into here? This is just sounding too crazy to pull off.
It's great when you finish a story thinking, oh yeah, we nailed it. This story was completely humbling. We pulled it off. Like, we pulled it off.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
My name is Jewel Gilfillan, and I'm an Oregon Field Guide producer. I've been producing the show for about 6 years now. August of 2014, we got a very intriguing email from a guy named Mike Malone who showed us slides of this canyon that he called Valhalla. As a producer, you basically want to control as many elements as you can. Well, with this assignment, like, all bets were off because the terrain was incredibly rugged. It was really remote.
Let me check the GPS.
And nobody knows about this place. So it was just dangerous and out of control on so many levels that I was kind of like, oh, wow, this is going to be really hard.
All right, let's do it.
After 2 scout trips and aerial recon, the next step was trying to recruit the team that would be able to navigate that canyon. This is what we're calling the surprise waterfall. We didn't know about this before.
Definitely intimidated by what we were projecting to encounter in there. It's like, oh my God, like this is big terrain, like this is big water.
Hike out, leaving Cole, and split off. This team will go here. I told them and showed them how unknown things were, how dangerous things could get. We just don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
And then to think that we were going to be in there for 3 to 5 days. We needed not only all of our backpacking equipment and our personal stuff for being able to survive in this place, we had to protect all of our camera gear, and then we had to have all the equipment to rappel or ascend vertical cliffs and waterfalls. The convergence of all of those things was unprecedented for me.
The danger level in this area, it's probably one of the higher ones out there. Scree fields, this is some of the worst I've seen. This is not a hike. We were going through brush. We were going under and over logs. There is no trail.
Up and over.
Whoop! It's dangerous. It's expert-only terrain. Landslide, rock fall, tree fall. Hypothermia is one of our biggest risks in this canyon. My job and my goal was to get these people through this canyon in one piece. Not an easy goal. We talk as a group, but ultimately I have to say yay or nay on any decisions that are made. That's a big thing to do for a group of folks that you know and care about, because you always want them to go home.
We had 3 crews moving in different directions, below, above, and up to the canyon. We needed a lot of support personnel, but we're also in a wilderness area, so you're limited to 12 people maximum. And that involved 4 different sets of volunteers coming in and leaving and joining other crews. It was like a giant Jenga game. You just had to know where to pull out the pieces and what pieces you had to have in place in order for the structure to hold. Aside from everything, we didn't know if the guys in the canyon were going to meet some obstacle they couldn't get around, they couldn't get out. We just didn't know it was in that canyon.
We head downstream and end up at this dramatic 40-foot drop, and the water's just plunging in this beautiful line straight down the middle, and there's nothing to rig to.
Sometimes you scratch your head and you've got 4 people looking at you ready for you to make a decision, so you have to think fast.
Here we go. Let's try this.
You can't waste your time or sit down and give up, but you have to be humble.
And I look at John, I was like, dude, I'm kind of freaked out here. He's like, I've never done anything like this before. Physically, I was pretty run out and just kind of emotionally a little on edge from just the roller coaster of excitement, fear, challenge, worry, etc. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm here to operate a camera also.
Everything's soaked. We had multiple punctures in our backpacks.
We got a little bit of a situation here. We've had to yard sail our camera gear just to dry stuff out. A lot of stuff got damp.
You're trying to survive, and you're trying to take care of yourself and all your equipment, that the amount of time that you actually have to be creative and to storytell is shockingly little.
That right there?
That's that right there.
That's this right here.
We're gonna have to be proficient and move fast.
We had distance to make. We had to be on it, and then we had to pack up and keep moving.
And go ahead.
We had a rock come down in front of me. And I didn't even see it. And it could have just killed me right there. The rescue is going to be a 2-day project because you can't fly a chopper in there. There's no basket rescues going on. So this is going to be men and women that are leaving their families or their jobs, hiking down a couple miles into a canyon, and then rappelling hundreds of feet into it. Not a good place to get hurt. So pretty much what we did was make sure that we didn't get hurt. And we got lucky doing that.
Topside to John.
Michael Bendixson and Benjamin are moving along the ridge up above us, looking for vantages and viewpoints that they can shoot down at us. And we're having pretty good communication with them. They, in turn, can communicate with Upper Base Camp.
Anything from an accident to storm rolling in. I would have to guide everybody out, make sure the satellite radio would work, call for help. You name it, we had everything covered, from the county to the search and rescue.
There was the planning and what we could manage to mitigate against. But then there were all these factors that were really out of our control, like what the weather would do. Well, that particular week, a big bubble of high pressure parked itself over the northwest, so it was like 100 degrees in the valley, and it was tolerable inside that canyon.
It's cold. You're literally hypothermic all day.
And 2015 happened to be a really low water year, so we got very lucky that the stream levels were much lower than they might have been otherwise.
Mike, give me a hand. You all right?
Todd and I left the crew inside the gorge and then followed Mike Malone and his son Sean all the way upriver with the hope that we'd all meet up at the Slot Canyon entrance a couple days later.
Okay, Sean and Mike.
There were huge old-growth logs across the stream, freezing cold water, Devil's Club, and there were yellow jackets. Todd is the main story cameraman. He's shooting everybody's movements wherever he is. There's really not a time where he's not working.
Try to stay fairly close together. Watch out, there's Devil's Club right here.
This ranked right up there among the top 2 or 3 maybe of all shoots I've ever done. It was just so hard. And all the while, the other guys were up deep into the canyon and we had no contact with them. I've never been more worried in my whole career, wondering, are these guys okay? Are they going to come out of there okay?
As we're moving downstream, it just opens up into this remarkable, beautiful amphitheater. We named that Cathedral Garden.
All of us were just like, whoa, and how far back our necks had to crane to see the top of this thing and take it all in.
This place is crazy.
It just had that open air, mystical, like giant feeling, and it kind of took on a spiritual moment in there.
Go ahead, this is John. Mike just wants to try and put together a plan for the shot.
This is the most precarious spot I've probably ever put a tripod on.
The vegetation was just hanging on by a thread. You have people under you that you're filming, so we had to tread very carefully, use a lot of safety systems, and communicate with the canyoneers below so we could get the shot, nobody got hurt.
Copy that.
Not by choice, but just out of need, we had to make camp there. There's definitely the worry of rockfall. Finally, as your brain gets tired of being worried, it really becomes something special to take it in for what it is and just accept that maybe we'll get crushed by rocks, maybe we'll wake up to sunrise, I don't know, but this moment is now and it's amazing.
I remember waking up that last morning and just going, okay, today's the day. We had no idea what those guys were going through. We didn't know if we were going to find them at the gates of Valhalla like we had planned.
The Gates is a great name. It really is like the entrance, the imposing door. It literally felt like a 20-degree difference stepping out of the gates, which had a little bit of a metaphor of like, oh my God, like, okay, the panic is calming down now. My worry of dying in this place is abating.
That moment when I saw everybody was just a tremendous relief.
Brutal.
These guys had just been through a gauntlet, and they were all lit up about it. They were smiling and happy.
You really have that sense of feeling in there of, we just accomplished something pretty big.
This trip in Valhalla stretched me way outside of my comfort zone. For me, I left it all on the table.
The stars aligned. It was a perfect team. People I got to share it with was the biggest thing that I take out of it. It's a team effort to get through there. It took all of us.
There's a real bond and connection that happens with the other people when you have this unified mission.
Everybody brought every ounce of goodwill and all of the magic that creates to the project, and that's, I think, how we pulled it off. It was quite a feat.
Well, after all of that excitement, we thought we would slow things down a bit with a stunning photo essay by Nick Fisher. It's a visual tour of the North Fork of the Lewis River. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next week. If you would like to see any of these stories again or want more information, please visit our website. And for a more behind-the-scenes look, you'll find us on Facebook.
Major support for Oregon Field Guide is provided by the Sailing Foundation. Additional support provided by Coit Family Foundation, Kei Kitagawa and Andy Johnson Laird, Christine and David Vernier, and the following, and the contributing members of OPB and viewers like you. Thank you.